America today is little more than a bloated, rotting corpse being plundered and looted by foreigners and corporations. There's sort of a sense now that everything is just up for grabs. It's not that we're in this together to build something. There's a sense that everyone knows that collapse is imminent, and everyone wants to grab whatever resources they can while they still have the opportunity. Just take whatever plunder you can for yourself. Boomers are the greatest example. The boomer generation has very little sense of what America is, but they know it intuitively in the way they act. They understand that America is just an opportunity to plunder something that greater men built. They understand it in their actions, in their bones. But if you were to ask them what they think America is, they would give you a very boomer-coded answer. They would say something like, America is about freedom or equality, or it's a nation of immigrants. It's about the right to the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. There's this sense among boomers and others that America is like this. It's this concept of American exceptionalism. It's something you have to grow out of if you read history much, or if you're familiar with the state of the world as it is today. But I mean, if you ask a boomer, they just have this vague conception. It's like, well, that's the difference between us and North Korea. In North Korea, you don't have freedom, and in here you do. Or that Russia is similar. I would love to be a boomer for a day and just see the world from their perspective. It's like they don't have any desire to understand the truth about anything, which in a way is beautiful. I'm not insulting them. There's like a beautiful simplicity. It's kind of feminine in this sense. It's like this innocent, like, unwillingness to face reality and like lack of any kind of realization that reality might be something other than the bubble that you're in. There's really two Americas, but people have been kind of taught this American mythology to merge them into one. It's the ideology that is most useful for people to believe is the one that is most supportive of the system. Educators are incentivized to teach you the beliefs about America that are most likely to keep people in power. As long as you believe that America is a democracy and should be one, you feel like you have some stamp of approval on the actions of your overlords because you had a vote, you had a say. That's the feeling that boomers have. And when I say boomers is a state of mind. It's really, it certainly applies to that generation, but it applies to many people from other generations as well. There's really two Americas, though. There's the post-war America, post-World War II, which really is an extension of World War I, so that's all kind of one event. And there's obviously pre-war America. America, as it was actually founded, the people who actually willed it into being what it is, what it was at the time, the people who made something from nothing, those people were white nationalists. They, in fact, passed laws at one time, I believe in like 1780 something or 1790, that only allowed new citizens to be of white descent. Those laws obviously didn't stay on the book. This gives you a sense of who these people were. They were land prospectors. An overwhelming number of American heroes who people look up to today were not purely motivated by higher ideals, by higher principles, as we like to teach our kids, as we like to imagine. In many cases, they were heavily motivated, not just the founders, but also many of the frontier icons of, the original frontier were motivated by land and money, and they had great incentives to expand the frontier westward first and foremost so that they could become wealthy landowners. George Washington himself wanted to be a British officer and pursue a career in the British military for the longest time, but they rejected him, so he chose to work with the Americans instead. That's an oversimplification, but the people who came to this country from Europe, there was a filtering mechanism there, and it was broadly speaking, a lot of poor people. It's a mix. Again, it's complicated. You had people coming over from England who were aristocrats as well in search of money, but you had a lot of people who had nothing to lose come to this country. You had thieves, you had opportunists. The reason why I characterize it in this way, it's not to disparage them. On the contrary, I feel comfortable describing the American founders in this way because I don't see that as a bad thing. Because I see the American spirit as fundamentally the frontier spirit, the spirit of the men who wanted to see what lied beyond to the West. Many people who came to this continent had no idea what they would find. I mean, really, they called it the New World. It was a new world to them. It was so alien and so different. To me, America is the people who settled further and further out west in search of a new life. That's the American spirit. And when the city and the civilization finally caught up to them, they sold their stuff and they moved on and they settled a new plot of land further out west. The American spirit is the Wright brothers being told by the media and institutions that flight was impossible, that humans would never discover a flying machine for another million years, according to the New York Times, and then choosing to ignore all that or disregard it completely and jumping off a hill in a makeshift flying machine made out of a bicycle. That is an incredible achievement. And that, to me, is the American spirit. They were undaunted by those who said it wasn't possible. But that's not the sense of what we're told America is today. The boomer narrative is that America is this bastion of freedom and democracy that exists in contrast to places like Putin's Russia or North Korea. And if you suggest anything outside of what a boomer has heard before in terms of what they consider to be acceptable, they will have a knee-jerk reaction to say, well, that's like North Korea. That's undemocratic. That's like Hitler. Everything is like Hitler. Everything we don't like is Hitler. Everything we do like is democracy. And if a country acts in ways that are favorable to the American regime overseas, then we say they're democratic, regardless of whether or not their elections are legitimate or whether or not they even still have elections. And if a country is not favorable to the American interest, whether they have elections or not, then we consider them undemocratic. I mean, this is not me exaggerating. This is literally, there's a democracy index that is just purely based on which countries are favorable to the American regime and do what they're told effectively by the American regime. But effectively, what America has become is a cheap banking hustle since both World Wars. And I like the founders. I like many of the ideas that they came up with. But that is not what led to America being the most powerful, wealthy country in the world. That's the narrative that we're given, but that's not what caused it. What caused America to become the most powerful in terms of military power and wealthy country has mostly to do with World War II. And it has mostly to do with the fact that we sat out while simultaneously encouraging the war to happen so that we could profit by selling weapons to the European countries so they could kill each other, and tremendous amounts of loans, and this is true in World War I as well. Tremendous numbers of loans from European countries were got from the United States. The United States sent lots of weapons over there. We were able to create a manufacturing hustle and a banking hustle through loans on the deaths of millions of Europeans. And then finally, in World War II, when things were favorable, the U.S. got involved in the war after millions had been killed. And of course, we step in and we bring all the gold to the United States. We establish the world reserve currency, take us off the gold standard, and inflate the US dollar to high hell, which is basically a form of literally robbing the rest of the world through printed money, and robbing, of course, American citizens. That is how America has become powerful and wealthy. It doesn't have really anything to do with, well, I won't say it has nothing to do with, but the spirit of the founding of America is beautiful in its own way. And that, to me, is the American spirit. This adventure, this call to seek beyond the horizon. That's the beautiful aspect of America. And if we can get back to that, maybe there's something worth saving. But understand that is not why America is wealthy and powerful today, not to the extent that it is. America, in that sense, is really just a big banking scam. We have effectively robbed other countries through the US dollar, through printing money, and robbed our own people. That has made the country wealthy on the whole, and our military-industrial complex has made us powerful, although perhaps we're beginning to see the limits of that power. These are not things that can be traced back to the principles of John Adams or Thomas Jefferson. These are cheap banking hustles that are brought about by the merchant class who rules the world in this dark age that we live in.